First, we want to welcome those of you who have joined today and those of you who might be able to catch this webinar at a later date. It's getting close to the holiday season for many of us. More so, it's getting close to a whole new year. We've had another incredible year of turtle conservation, a lot of new things happening across the globe, and of course, at our Turtle Survival Center. And we're only days away from another year of turtle conservation in 2024, and we're looking forward to a lot of exciting things. There's going to be a lot happening out at the Turtle Survival Center, as there always are. But one of the things about closing off 2023 is that we are closing on the first chapter, the first 10 years of the Turtle Survival Center. And we're really looking forward to a new chapter. But for those first 10 years, we have to say thank you. Thank you to everybody. I hear my child, Elizabeth Grace, she is saying thank you right now. So we have to say thank you to all of the people who have made the Turtle Survival Center what it is, from all the people who just supported the idea, the vision of the Turtle Survival Center, to building out the enclosures, building out all the facilities, all the staff, all the volunteers who have worked, and all those yet to come, because this is something that is going to continue to grow. It needs to grow because turtle conservation is something that is only still blossoming. We're still in the early stages. For turtles, they move at a slower pace, and so does turtle conservation. We have to move at their pace. So in reality, turtle conservation is only really blossoming, and we're going to just see it continue on into the next decade and decades beyond that. All right, Chris. So let's get started out with this thing. Okay, this is the impact report. So we just put out an impact report. It is something that for those of you watching, hopefully you have it in your homes. If not, you can go to our website, turtlesurvival.org, and be able to click on an issue version. Now that is a digital version in which you can click through. You can look at not only all the programs across the world that we've made an impact in, but also the timeline, the 10 years of the Turtle Survival Center in Cross, South Carolina. So you'll be able to get to see different hatching events, when different buildings came on. And then also super important, as I mentioned, is our vision for the future. So please pick up your impact report right now if you have it with you and follow along with us, or of course, check it out afterwards. And in that impact report, like I was saying, is a timeline that we have, a decade of success. And there's a lot of really cute turtle pictures, because you cannot have a turtle survival center featuring many of the world's most endangered turtles and tortoises without cute turtles. And of course, very important hatching events for those turtles. So please follow along, check it out. But we want to start here, of course, at the beginning. It's the best place to start, with a story, with a journey, and this journey of the Turtle Survival Center. So the Turtle Survival Center, as we know it now, is a flourishing center. You have breeding programs for many, many critically endangered and endangered species of turtles, and those programs are only growing. The populations are growing, but they had to start somewhere, and they had to start with a vision. And that vision is something that came to fruition now more than 10 years ago in this place called Cross, South Carolina. Chris, why don't you take us on a little journey back in time to the vision of what the Turtle Survival Center would be, why you decided on Cross, South Carolina, and everything that led up to that moment of 2013, breaking the ground and starting on our journey.
All right, great. Thanks, Jordan. And One point of housekeeping here, our participants, if you have any questions during this presentation, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A, and Jordan will bring those up, and we can answer them at any time during this thing. You don't have to wait till the end, although you can if you want, but I just wanted to make that clear that we do have a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you want to use it at any time. So the vision for the Turtle Survival Center has been a vision that the TSA, in a way, has always had since day one, dating back to 2001, when the organization was founded and started. And I have been lucky enough to have been part of the organization since day one, and have seen everything develop in the organization over the couple of decades or more here. And so the thing was, the TSA didn't have a budget to buy land and build facilities that would cost, millions of dollars to do what we wanted to do. Where would we do it? However, in the early days, there were TSA management board members did look at fish farms in Georgia, Florida, other places, but it was all just unaffordable with the very small budget that the TSA had. For the first 9 years of the organization, let's say 8 years, there were no employees. The entire organization was volunteer run, and turtles were managed through volunteer taxon management groups for each species. So the idea, things kept growing and growing, of course. There were multiple confiscations. There were more animals coming in through donations, animals hatching from the original large confiscation in 2001 of thousands of turtles in Hong Kong. A bunch of them came over here, were processed in Florida. And we finally reached this point where we needed a base of operations. And I was managing hundreds and hundreds of turtles at the Savannah River Ecology Lab in South Carolina, where I was employed for 11 years. And a friend of mine, Dr. Sam Seashall, owned this property that you see here in the center, kind of in the center of the photograph. And he built it as a crocodile conservation center and wildlife rehab center with his then wife. And they had all kinds of animals here, not just crocodiles and king cobras, but they had all kinds of mammals and kangaroos and cassowaries and emus and many animals, hooved animals, water buffalo, camels. So it was quite a menagerie here. And in 2010, he had gone through a divorce with his wife, and the kind of dream had kind of fallen out of this whole facility that they were building together. And he offered it to me one day to use for turtles. Now, I was living 2 hours away from here in Aiken, South Carolina, and so it wasn't real feasible for me to do that. But I brought it up to our board of directors and brought some of TSA management out here to see this facility, and put together a proposal to just purchase this place from him. He gave us a good deal on it. He was going to sell it to us for about half of what he put into it to build what he had built already, and the land itself, which is 51 acres. Actually, it's a pretty nice chunk of land, and we only have about 4 acres of it developed and about 10 acres fenced in. So this was an opportunity to do this, and it all just kind of fell together at the right place, the right time. Everything connected, and we were able to start a fundraising campaign in 2012, and we raised the money rather quickly to outright purchase the property without financing it. The board was adamant about not financing the property. So we were able to outright purchase it, and exactly 1 month from today, it would be the 11-year anniversary of the purchase of the property. And on January 21st, the papers were signed, money was transferred, and it belonged to the TSA. And March 26th of that year, 2 months later, I began moving myself and turtles from the ecology lab over here. That was a 6-month process, though. It took me I was taking care of animals here and at the turtle or at the ecology lab, going back and forth twice a week. The 2-hour drive, and each time moving more turtles, more tanks, more racks, more equipment over here at the same time, building, tearing down stuff that we couldn't use and that was here from the previous owner, and building the enclosures that we needed for the types of turtles that we maintain. So it was a process, but it finally came to fruition, and then now we just had to build it and make it happen and get the animals settled and doing their thing.
All right, thanks, Chris. And so, with that being said, the last thing you said was now we had to get to building it, right? So you have these turtles, you have the property, you have the dream. This photo right here from early 2013, talk about a picture being worth 1,000 words. I'm sure you can give us a few more than 1,000 words to describe this experience. I mean, what was this like? Because now it's early spring in the Lowcountry. Tell us what that was like getting this off the ground, because now there was turtles that needed homes.
So we started this the day that I moved here. I was the only employee at that time, the only person here running this place, and the first couple of months anyway. And we did bring in a crew, people that we know, Dave Manser, Jay Allen, and some of his people, to build the first set of outdoor enclosures, the forested species type enclosures. And the thing was, that year it rained almost every day for 6 months or so, every day just raining and raining. And that's what was happening here. We built our forest complex, the first set of enclosures, 23 enclosures, I believe, in 3 different units. And we did it in 13 days, but it was in these conditions, in pouring rain most days, most days all day. Right now it's not raining, but it was probably a brief time of no rain when we took this picture. And you can see the ground is just saturated. The equipment is sink. We had to use equipment to get equipment out of the mud. But we did it. In 13 days we built the first 23 enclosures. But it was a struggle for sure. And we've gotten better over the years and with this and doing it under better conditions, of course. So this was a weird time to be doing this, but we did it, but it's a little bit visible in the enclosures that we built during this week or 2 weeks time, because you can see that they're all a little bit wonky as we were building in mud.
Yeah, and I think what it also really shows is, I mean, you're talking about that short amount of time to get those first enclosures in, especially in this rainy, up and down, cold, hot weather. I'm sure there was, mosquitoes everywhere on those warm days, while fingers were numb on the necks. But the people who are just dedicated to getting this together, that's what one of the big things behind the Turtle Survival Alliance, right? Is you just started with this grassroots group of dedicated people to this vision, and you have these people coming out here. You have financial supporters, you have zoo support, and they're just there to get the work done because they love turtles.
Yeah.
So going on from there, now it was cold, it was warm, it was rainy. Finally, you get to put the first turtle into the outdoor habitats. Tell us about this photo. Really symbolizes that. What species of turtle is this, and what is, tell us about the symbolism of this, and then moving on after that.
This happened in the summer. I can't remember exactly what month. It's probably early summer. And this was the first turtle that we released into an outdoor enclosure. This is a Moremys nigricans, the redneck pond turtle. Used to be called the Quang Tung River turtle. And these were the old crocodile ponds. They were originally, the previous owner had 11 species of crocodilians here. And this was one of those crocodile pools. not ideal for some of the species, most of the species that we maintain here at the center, but great for moremis, pond type turtles, so moremis nigricans and anamensis, the Vietnamese pond turtle. But this male here is one that has been with me for a long time. It was part of the Tewksbury Institute of Herpetology when it closed down Richard Ogus facility, and that's where a lot of the turtles that came to the center have been in captivity in some cases for decades, since the early 80s, and they are all established captive animals, most of them. Some more recent confiscations or acquisitions, but mostly these were longer term animals that I managed to kind of piece together these little small populations through private people that I know that had some of these turtles in their backyards or their basements that weren't necessarily doing anything with them, and that's kind of how we built some of these populations. For instance, the Tewksbury Institute of Herpetology, when that closed down, they had 1,600 turtles. I took 400 of them, and that was back in 2004. Many of those animals, including that one right there in my hand, are still here to this day. So I've known a lot of these turtles for 20 to 30 years myself personally, and I know the histories on all these individuals, where they were, some of them going back to the 1960s, and whose hands they were in over the years. So it's pretty interesting, the kind of life histories of the individual turtles. Don't necessarily know where they came from, but other than their geographic range, but I know where they've been, many of them, since they've been in captivity in the United States, again in some cases for decades.
Yeah, and it's not just, you talk about the individual turtles. This image here is interesting in that, for most people, you see a small brown turtle, and it is just one of hundreds of species of tortoises and freshwater turtles, more than half of which are threatened with extinction. For the lay person, they probably have never heard of a redneck pond turtle or a Kwangtung river turtle. But this species here, I mean, Chris, you're talking about a species that is at least functionally extinct in the wild, if not presumed extinct in the wild. And a place like this, the Turtle Survival Center, holds some of the most important members of this species left in the world.
Yeah.
So it's nice, it's lush. You have, the turtle going into the pond here, and we expanded, right? So now the Turtle Survival Center has a myriad of different endangered and critically endangered species that are represented, and there's active breeding programs for. And this is to give you all an idea of what is here now in 2023, because I'm about to make another big jump. I was just talking about it being lush. There was a big event occurred, Chris, that very well could have ended things before they began. And that is this right here. It's something that you don't expect in the South Carolina Lowcountry, especially when you're thinking of setting up assurance colonies for the world's most endangered turtles and tortoises. Tell us about this experience, because it looks harrowing, and I'm sure there's a harrowing tale behind it.
Well, it's interesting because, I've lived in this state for 22 years, and half in Aiken and half over here in the Charleston area. And we don't ever see anything like this. This is it happens maybe in the northern part of the state occasionally, but not down below Interstate 20. So this was a freak occurrence. The conditions were just perfect to create all this ice on the trees. The trees are not adapted for this type of weather. So many of them, thousands of them, were breaking for like 2 or 3 days. You just hear snap, 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 just trees breaking, popping everywhere. But it was a winter wonderland. It was all these pine trees. So all this sap was in the air that you could smell for like a week. But we didn't have electricity for a week. We didn't have, cell towers were down. We had to clear the roads even to be able to get out. I mean, it was a real mess. Luckily, none of the structure was, there was a little bit of fence damage, but none of the buildings or enclosures got damaged at all from all the falling trees, broken trees. We lucked out in that way. We just had some of the main house, the residential house, had a little bit of damage to it, but other than that, we came out fine. We did have, because of the lack of electricity, we only had one portable generator at the time. This was like 11 months after we started this facility. This happened, and we had to move all of those turtles, the tropical turtles anyway, into one room in the residential house. And we used that generator and used space heaters to heat that one room. Well, we heated the turtles, but the rest of us all the people were freezing, and our dogs and everything. But we kept those turtles nice and toasty, and we just put them all in plastic containers and stacked them up in this room, and kept them that way for a week until we got our electricity back and could clean up a lot of the mess that was around the grounds. But yeah, it was quite an event, and we have to deal with that, a few times, different times. We have hurricanes come through here pretty much every year. We have never had a direct hit since we've started this facility, but we do get the outer bands of many hurricanes that pass by. So we get a lot of rain, and occasionally, once or twice, we've had some pretty significant flooding of that red building, which houses our veterinary clinic, conference room, offices, and food prep room, and other areas. So we do have to deal with weather conditions from time to time, as most places do. But we are much better prepared now with multiple, stationary generators, portable generators. We have many checklists that we go over if a freeze event is expected, or snow or ice, or and then this has only ever happened one time. It could happen again, obviously, but this is literally the only time in recorded history that this has happened in this area.
Well, yeah, and the amazing thing is, you go from the vision, you move all the turtles there, you go through everything back in the spring of 2013 with the groundbreaking, and then a year later, you're hit with, you'd like to say, thrown into the fire, but in reality, you're thrown into the ice here. And it presents this whole new set of challenges. But the thing that might interest a lot of people is that for a number of the species, we think of turtles and tortoises, occupying all sorts of habitats. But a lot of the ones at the center are from Asia and South Asia and Southeast Asia. Were there turtles here that this is a completely fine, weather conditions for?
Absolutely. Species such as Kora Pictor and Kora Aroccapata that are found kind of northwest of Shanghai in China, where up in mountainous areas where it's a lot colder than it is here. So they do benefit from these cold winters for reproductive cycling, for physiological needs. So we do see, I think, just anecdotally, when we have colder winters, we tend to have a little bit better reproduction with those species than winters that are pretty much, we have very mild winters occasionally too, where it never really even gets to freezing, maybe 1 or 2 nights, and that's it. So it does. And even the species that we manage, say from parts of northern Vietnam or southern China or other places, are up at higher elevations. So the climate is very similar in that regard. Now we're at low elevation, but it does get cold here. It commonly gets in the 40s and sometimes 30s in the wintertime, and like it is this week. And so it's very comparable, and it works out quite well for most of these Kora species that we target and focus on.
Yeah, and well, so like the expression "April showers bring May flowers," it seems that for, say, Kora Aroccapata, the yellow-headed or golden-headed box turtle, this may have ushered in a great breeding season. And well, in reality, it did. It brought forth the first hatching events of the yellow-headed box turtle at the Turtle Survival Centers just in the second year of its existence. And I'm going to play this video here because a lot of people have probably never seen a yellow-headed box turtle hatch. I would say the majority of people on Earth have never seen this. Chris, you've been lucky enough to see this, so we'll just play this a minute. And
I've been lucky enough to see this dozens of times, actually, which is quite a treat.
So this also, I mean, this tell us more about the yellow-headed box turtle. What, the symbolism here, what it represents for the Turtle Survival Center, and the representative of its genus of Asian box turtles.
So we set out to build this facility with the genus Kora in mind, being that they are the most one of the most endangered group of turtles, the most endangered genus of turtles, with most of them of the species being, we say it's 13 species, but there are just a few more species described. So, that stuff's always changing, but these are a very rare group of turtles. They're highly sought after for various reasons by different people all over the planet. So they've been very difficult to conserve in the wild, of course. So really, for some of these, their only hope for existence for now is captive assurance colony management. And for Aroccapata, what we just looked at, the yellow-headed box turtle, is one of those, one of the rarest vertebrate species on the planet. It has been collected out of the wild. The last known individual was found in 2013. No one has seen another one since in the wild. And there just aren't that many people breeding them either. Some folks in Europe, some folks in China, and then there are 4 known localities in the United States that are breeding them. And we have the largest population of them, I believe, of the founder animals here at the Turtle Center. And we have been quite successful with them over the years and have brought more into the world. But other than that, you have, private breeders in China that are doing it commercially. So they're not going to go extinct, but they're not being managed. In China, they're not being managed for conservation. But in Europe and in the U.S., they are. So this species, along with a few others, we hope that with the very few wild-caught animals that are left, the McCord's box turtle, the Joe's box turtle, the Yunnan box turtle. I mean, these are extremely rare turtles, and keeping them in existence is our top priority, because we love turtles and we don't want to see them go extinct. And but I think this is a long haul. Obviously, when you want to do this type of work, it's probably not going to happen in your lifetime in some case for some species, but we do want to see these animals back out in the wild, and that is the purpose of having assurance colonies. So there are options to do that when the time is right.
All right, thanks, Chris. No, that was a great overview, and it really points to, especially for these animals of the Kora genus, of the Turtle Survival Center being an arc for the species, for their future preservation, and again, the potential to put them back in the wild, because that's the goal. That is always the goal, is to see turtles once again thriving in the wild. And so 2014, that's a great year to really kick off with the hatching of Aroccapata as it's symbolic towards what the Turtle Survival Center is. So we move on. We had the ice. We had the hatching of the Aroccapata into 2015. So this picture right here is still on that same vein of the Kora being the flagship. And this is nice. It's lush. It's tropical. We've talked a lot about cold weather, but there's also a lot of hot weather in South Carolina. Tell us about the importance of this facility that we see here, Kora Complex 1, and what it means for the future of the species that are contained within it.
Yeah, so we built this facility so it would be as secure as possible for against predators, whatever. It has a nice cement footer going down 2 feet into the ground with the wire caging down into that cement. So really, there are very few animals that can get in and out of here besides insects, lizards, small snakes. That's about it. Nothing else can get in or out of here. And what we have in here are some of the rarest of the rare. That's why we kind of build it. The turtles that are basically irreplaceable, like the yellow-headed box turtle or Joe's box turtle or McCord's box turtle. And we also have Cicalia in here, not quite as rare, but still in a lot of trouble. And yeah, so it's worked out really well. We have each of the 4 units has up to 12 individual enclosures. We keep everyone we try to keep all of our turtles, adult turtles anyway, individually. That way we know the parentage of everything. We have a pedigree of all the offspring because we know who is breeding with who. And we collect the eggs and we number them. That's all, kept in a system. So we know everything about these animals, and that's how we manage them and keep them. So we don't have to do DNA work to figure out who's related to who, and we can put together groups of animals of subadult groups of, say, males and females as they grow up, and send them to other facilities to do the same thing.
And so 2015, I mean, this was an important year. And speaking of knowing animals, that brings me to this next group of animals, because this picture here is emblematic of a whole group of turtles that you know very well and have a really interesting story. And the acquisition of this group of turtles, which I know you're going to tell us about, really helped elevate Turtle Survival Center's status in the world for these taxa of turtles. So please tell us all about the species that we see here and why getting this group of animals was so important.
Yeah, so this is a group of 3 species commonly referred to as the Galbinifrons complex. They used to be considered subspecies of each other, but from left to right, you have the Indo-Chinese box turtle Galbinifrons, the Barrett's box turtle from Vietnam, Barretti, and the southernmost of the species, the southern Vietnam box turtle Pictorata. And these individuals came from a woman and her husband in Hong Kong, Vivian and Jason Chung, who Vivian is an architect, and when she was assigned to build a fire station near where she lived in Hong Kong, there was a wet market next door where they sold fish and animals for food, and she saw all these. This is back in early 2000s, and she saw all these turtles being slaughtered, all these really pretty Galbinifrons and other turtles, and she went to the authorities and wanted to know what could be done about it, and they said nothing because it's totally legal. They're just fish, you do whatever you want with them. And so she started buying them from the markets herself. She started buying these turtles. She was rehabbing them in her 7th floor apartment in downtown Hong Kong. I think the entire island is a downtown, basically. So she followed protocols from the New England Turtle Hospital for acclimating market turtles, and spent just a long period of time, just many sleepless nights, tube feeding, medicating, getting these animals cleaned up and healthy. And she maintained them that way in her apartment for about 10 years. And then things happened, And one thing led to another. She got word of us and she contacted me, or I contacted her, I can't remember. But we worked out a deal to bring them all over here. She saw what the Turtle Center was doing, saw photos of it, and thought this was a great sanctuary for her turtles to live and be a part of conservation breeding. And so we made arrangements, and we had a TSA person just happened to be living in Hong Kong as his wife was teaching there, and he helped her kind of properly pack all these up and ship them here. And she donated these turtles to us. It was a total of 106 or 7 individuals, about 80 of them, these three, the Kora, the Galbinifrons complex species. And that created a whole population in the United States. There are, there are many Galbinifrons, at least, have been around. These used to be common pet store turtles, but most of them have died over the decades. And in fact, the ones that are still alive are from Dr. Barbara Bonner and the New England Turtle Hospital. That when Dr. Bonner died in 2004, a lot of her turtles went out to people, and I assume some of them, or a lot of them, are still alive to this day. So that was a real boost for the SSP, the Species Survival Plan. We do work with the AZA and other zoological and conservation entities to share the overall populations of these individual species. And so this was a huge boost for the Species Survival Plans in the AZA to bring these turtles here. And Vivian has never been here to visit yet. I've gone to China and spent time with her, but her husband was here a few years ago, and he was in North Carolina for something and drove down and got to see all the turtles. And like this turtle that he's holding in his hand right here is right out the door here, not far from me right now, buried under a pile of leaves, and she has offspring almost every year.
That's an incredible story, especially, how fortuitous it was that she registered all the animals with the government.
I forgot about that part, yeah.
Yeah, so this species, I mean, as you know, Chris, well, these species in the 1990s, they were brought over by the tens of thousands into the United States, into Europe, into other parts of Asia. When I was in middle school in the mid 90s, these were $15 turtles at a pet store. And then it's a microcosm of the plight of turtles, especially of these Southeast Asian turtles, where they go from being so popularly traded, which means poached out of the wild and killed, to being species that we're now like grasping at straws to hang on to the very last ones and create these assurance colonies like at the Turtle Survival Center. So just the fact that Vivian and Jason had this idea to save these turtles, I mean, talk about the implications for the future for these species down the road.
Yeah, and I did forget to mention, she did purchase all the turtles that she has from 2002 to 2004. And then when they did become protected, she actually had the forethought to have them all registered with the government, every individual animal. And that is the only reason we were able to get permits, because people always say, well, why don't you just go to China and buy them out of the markets and bring them back? Well, you can't get it. You can't get a legal export permit out of China or Hong Kong for that. So that the only reason, literally, that the government there allowed it was because she had them all registered, which is kind of weird, because I know that the government of Hong Kong still does what is called a re-export permit from animals from other countries. Like in 2011, 12, we saw a lot of Manoria and impressed tortoises and these these Pictorata and other species coming out of Vietnam that should not have been coming out of Vietnam, went to Hong Kong. Hong Kong issues a re-export permit, and a bunch of them kind of flooded into the U.S. at that time. But these are all market animals, so almost every one of those animals did not survive those imports, even in 2011 and 12, because they're in such bad shape and conditions from the actual trade route process itself.
Yeah. So I think we can all say thank goodness for Vivian and Jason and what they've brought for the species.
Yeah.
So let's move on to 2017, because we've talked about the beginning of the center. We've talked about growing the facilities. We've talked about turtles hatching. We've talked about these acquisitions like the one with the Chungs. In 2017, we finally really opened the doors to the public. Now, of course, there were many people who have been through the center, but at the symposium on the conservation and biology of tortoises and freshwater turtles that year in Charleston, we gave everybody the opportunity to actually come see the center, come tour through. And this was, that's a big moment. All of these people who've heard about the center, a lot of them who have donated towards the center, who have maybe even, sent in-kind donations, finally got to see the Ark in South Carolina. Tell us a little bit about that experience. And I know, the work that went into it,
Yeah, it was great. It was obviously a lot of work. It was hectic. We brought, close to 200 people out here that day, and had to have everything set up. You can't just bring 200 people through the center, so everyone had to be broken up into groups, and we, just had this tandem touring going on all morning long, and then we'd set people up under a tent. But it was really great to show off all the work that the staff here had done over those. I mean, that was year number 4 when this happened. So just to see how much had happened in 4 years, basically all in-house. We've done all this stuff we do ourselves, basically. We outsource a little bit of it, like the block work, masonry work, and putting up some of these structures, but we still help do it all, so it's done the way we want it done, and done what we consider the right way to do it. So it was really great to show off all of this work to the greater at large worldwide turtle community. And I think everyone really enjoyed it, and had, got a lot out of it, and a lot of good feedback. People were certainly impressed, with what we're doing here. And that's great.
Yeah, and there was a new group of people that year that I hope were impressed and got something out of it. And that brings us to something that really changes the direction of the Turtle Survival Center from what it is as a management and breeding facility to really a center for learning. And this here is what we call the Intern House. It was purchased in 2017 to coincide with the beginning of the intern program. But really, Chris, I think you can speak to it. It's more than just having an internship program. This has now been able to allow us to have visiting veterinarians. It allows us to have people from the zoologic community come to do research on the turtles. And also people from abroad are able to now come and stay and learn, and not only share their experiences, but for you all to share your experiences, for them to take back to the programs that they have in their countries, and assurance colonies and breeding projects. So if you can tell us a bit about this and what went into it, the thing,
Yeah, so we launched this the internship program, the formal internship program, in 2017, as Jordan mentioned, and we bought this house, and this was taken in brand new. This is like right after we put this house in, so it's all fresh and clean, and there's no grass or anything yet, and The stain is all nice and new on the deck, and so it's this is brand spanking new. But to date, since 2017, we've had 22, I believe, interns. Some from even abroad. We had one person from England, maybe one other one, I think. But people from all over, and many of the interns have remained in the field of either turtle conservation, veterinary medicine, something to do with, education, but working with reptiles, if not specifically turtles, but several of them are still doing actual work with turtles. We were really doing our best to foster the next generation because, as we mentioned earlier, turtles live an extremely long time, and everything that they do takes a long time, and it takes multi-human lifetimes to accomplish some of the stuff we're trying to accomplish. So some of us are, none of us will get to see everything that we're setting out to do, but we'll get to see some of it. We're already seeing turtles being put back into the wild in some cases, not from here yet, but from programs that the TSA has in range countries through captive breeding or head starting programs. And the Burmese star tortoise comes to mind. There are now thousands of them out back on the landscape, and the Burmese roof turtle as well. There were recently 50 more released into the Upper Chinwin River. So these things are happening, and the goal is, of course, one day that we are putting some turtles that we are hatching here, sending them back to their countries of origin to either be used in breeding programs there or actually to be going back out into the wild. But without having future younger generations to pick up for this is an ongoing thing. So this is a very important aspect of what we do, helping to train the next generation and beyond to do this work.
All right, thanks, Chris. So next up, I do want to show this photo. In the interest of time, we won't get into it too much. But 2018, this was an important event that really it speaks about the breeding projects. And again, going back to this vision, South Carolina, the right climate, all that kind of stuff. Tell us about these 8 hatchlings right here.
So this was really exciting for us. This is Kora Pictor, the southern Vietnam box turtle. And this particular year, this is the first year, this is the second year that we hatched them, but this year we hatched 9 of them, which at the time was thought to be the most ever hatched at one location in a breeding season or in 1 year. So that was really exciting for us. We have a lower number, a pretty low number of adults of these. So to hatch 9, basically the second year that we hatched them was really, really cool, and not something that very few people do. No zoos have ever bred these in the United States anyway, and but we are doing it, and we continue to do it. And at this point in time, I think we've hatched about 40 of them over the past few years. So we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, and it's not like, with these, so everyone understands these species that we're talking about. We're not talking about animals that lay 8 eggs, 10 eggs, multiple clutches per year. You're talking about a couple eggs per year, if that. And so it really speaks volumes just to the ability and everything that the staff puts in to being able to create the right environment for these animals to have the best reproductive success.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. They're not a real prolific. The nice thing about the Pictorata, though, is that they breed all year round. They're tropical, so they're active all year, and they can lay eggs any month of the year.
Yeah.
Whereas many of the other Kora species are temperate, and it's just a fine window of activity and egg laying. in the summertime.
Right. But there's always something going on, at least. There's,
Yeah.
with those different seasons, at the Turtle Survival Center, there's always something happening.
Yep.
And there's been a lot happening in this, in the second half of the 10 years. There's so much that we could go over. But one thing that I do want to touch on here is this little turtle in the year 2020, because it represents we won't say a seismic shift, but we'll say a shift in the mission and vision of the Turtle Survival Center, wherein everything has been focused up until that point on Asian and Asian and African species and some Australasian species. But now we're kind of diving into a new game. So tell us about this turtle, Chris.
So this is the flattened musk turtle from the United States. It's endemic to northern Alabama. It has been extirpated from much of its range. It is a critically endangered species by the IUCN, and it's one that fits very well into our criteria for captive population management. So we did in 2020 decide to take on this one North American species, our only North American species that we have. There are others that could be on the list, but they're not really obtainable. Even this one is pretty much unobtainable, except that we've been working for the past few years with the state of Alabama, with their wildlife department and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to put together a formal assurance colony for this species. We do have this one male. He is the only male that was in a zoological or in the AZA institution. And he was at Tennessee Aquarium, and they sent him here in 2020. And we are working on obtaining others. Basically, would like to collect some of the remnant individuals that may be out there where in creeks that they've been pretty much extirpated from, and put together a group. There's one little stronghold in Bankhead National Forest where they occur. We don't want to take them from there, but from the outer creeks, and we're working on getting permission to do that. And we would also share this colony with probably 2 other zoos, Birmingham naturally being in Alabama, and maybe Jacksonville. So we're working on, actually as we speak, we're working on finalizing a proposal. We've kind of have the verbal agreement from the authorities to do this. Now we just got to get it finalized and start working on this. And that's very exciting for us to have a U.S. species that needs this kind of help that we can work with. Yeah, it's not exciting that it needs this help, but it is the reality. But us getting to work with a species like this is exciting for us.
Right. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. You don't ever want to see a species as endangered as this. And for a lot of people in the United States, I mean, a species like this is something that you're largely unaware of. This tiny little flattened musk turtle that lives only in Alabama. They're endemic to Alabama. And their populations have just been decimated. And there's not a lot of great hope for what is left in the wild. And that just points to how important having assurance colonies like the Turtle Survival Center are, so that we can preserve these animals and, when and where the time is right, be able to put them back in the wild. And it also symbolizes, we're growing our North American presence, right? So the Turtle Survival Alliance was born out of the Asian turtle crisis, and we do, of course, have projects, programs, and partnerships all over the globe. But North America has very much become a front and center issue for a lot of people and with a lot of the species. And this little animal is a big, it's a symbol of the direction that we're moving in with our Turtle Survival Center and the potential.
Yeah.
So moving on to 2022, uh, this beautiful little hatchling was the first hatchling of its kind at the Turtle Survival Center. And it brings us to a whole new realm that one has to talk about when we're talking about the future of turtles, and that's conservation genetics. And using conservation genetics to be able to forge the path forward. Chris, tell us a little bit about this species that we're looking at here, and how important it is that genetics do drive what we do at the Turtle Survival Center.
Yeah. So this is the Chinese three-striped box turtle, which until 2006 was just considered Kora trifasciata across its whole range, which includes Vietnam and Hainan and southern China. And but it turns out that it's actually two species. The new Kora cyclornata, the Vietnamese three-striped box turtle, was described in 2006, and that has been verified through genetics and through morphology and all that. I mean, that's what's accepted these days. And the thing is, though, these two species, these different forms have been kept together for at least 5 decades. If you go back to the early days of turtle farming in China in the 1970s, and maybe even earlier than that, but certainly all of the animals, even in zoos and in private collections, people didn't know where they're coming from. They all kind of superficially look the same, and until you start really looking at the details. And so these things were all mixed. So there are hundreds, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of hybrids that have been produced over the decades, and probably more than that. And so finding the pure animals to be in a conservation breeding situation. So the ones that are going back to Hainan are animals that are genetically adapted, physiologically adapted to be in Hainan or in the middle of the mountains in Vietnam or Laos or wherever. So we have been working on the genetics with Natalia Gallejo Garcia from Colombia, and she is our conservation geneticist. She's a PhD. She's been doing this a long time, and she's not only working out the speciation part of this, looking at genetics. So we say, okay, which ones are pure, and we can get it down to like percentages too. Like this individual is just 15% cyclornata and 85% trifasciata. We can really get that fine detail with the genomics work it's being done. But even also, we're doing population genetics, looking at the population of these captive animals. How related are the wild-caught founders to each other? How related are all the offspring that we've acquired from different breeders around the country? And really looking at that and doing a kinship analysis so we can make the best informed decisions on which individuals to pair with each other, so the most unrelated ones going together for breeding purposes, just to maximize those genes and the mutations for long-term genetic viability.
No, it's fascinating stuff. And, I keep talking about how there's these different points that bring us to a new level. So, of course, the Turtle Survival Center opening, the Kora complex is being built, the internship program, and then this genetic component is really, really important in elevating the status of the Turtle Survival Center and what we are doing, and making sure that what we're doing is scientifically sound for the future of that species.
Yeah, and some of these species we're working with really down to the last few individuals, so very important to. I mean, some of these species actually take the McCord's box turtle, for instance, has a very tiny range. It's possible that, and once we really look into their genetics, they may all be related to each other, fairly closely related to each other, because they have a tiny, tiny range. And we did see that when we did it with the Moremy's nigricans, also a small range turtle. Many of the wild-caught founders were related to each other.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So, on the note of fascinating stuff, you in 2023, you got to share all of this fascinating information. We have to talk about Turtle Course or Turtle School, or really Turtle Camp. It's this new program that you all devised, and it's going to continue forward. I know is a great success. Tell us about Turtle School.
Yeah, so we this is something we had planned to launch in 2020, but apparently there was a pandemic in the world that I heard about, so we weren't allowed to do it. Yeah, so we did finally get to do it this year, in conjunction, basically, 6 weeks after our conference that was held here in Charleston. So it was a lot of work for the staff to get that prepared, but then also 6 weeks later have this course ready to go for 16 participants. And then we brought in, I think, 9 guest lecturers with all their different expertise in turtle, everything turtle. So the official title of this course is Colonian Biology, Conservation, and Management. So we basically, in 7 days, being in class, 11, 12 hours a day with lectures and hands-on activities, just tried to cover as much as we possibly could across everything turtle, from physiology to evolution to population management, identification, marking, ID marking, exhibit design, breed, all of it. We just covered everything that we could in that amount of time. So it was a lot of information, but we got a lot of just great feedback from all of these folks that you see here, and also the instructors too. It was I think everyone really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it, and took that back to their individual facilities. This first year, we had all basically zoo employees, zoo professionals, animal care professionals from a variety of zoos around the country and all over the country. And even one, the guy here over on the right in the oddball shirt, he came from the Chester Zoo in England. So we had one international person attend as well. So it was very successful, and something we will continue to do in next year and beyond.
Yeah, I really only see it growing. And again, we're talking about elevating the status. We have to think of the Turtle Survival Center not just as this, this sanctuary, we'll say, in the woods, where critically endangered turtles are being managed and bred, but really as an institute of learning. The bigger picture is that there's so much that we can do to not only focus on these species, but turtle conservation as a whole. And this course going forward is going to be a major player in that, for people around the world, for our zoo partners, for our other NGO partners, in being able to, again, be able to have best management practices for turtle conservation. So that being said, I want to go back here and look at this again, looking at what 10 years of the Turtle Survival Center represents. Cris, tell us about the current population at the Survival Center now, 10 years later. Hundreds of turtles hatched, new acquisitions like we've talked about, and then why these species, really? And looking forward, will there be any more species that are brought into the fold, do you foresee?
Oh, certainly. Our collection plan is a living document. We review it and revise it every single year, right around this time usually, is when we start working on the revision and or the updating at least. And so, yeah, all of these turtles are carefully chosen based on a variety of criteria, such as can they survive outdoors here in this climate? Are they critically endangered? Are there very successful programs either in country or in captivity elsewhere? So we look at all of that and kind of whittle it down, or are they available? Like I mean, Kora yunanensis, for example, the Yunnan box turtle is one that would be on our list, but they're unobtainable unless there's a confiscation of them. We would never see them most likely. So they would be on our list, our target species list, but they're not because they're unobtainable. So these were all species that were occurring in the country already and were obtainable, or we already had them. And so that's kind of how they're chosen for the most part. But it's really, we start with every single species in the world and we look at these different criteria, and then it comes down to what we can manage here. So, you know, then there are other species that would potentially be available, say like some of the giant soft shells like Elacheles or Chitra, these big giant Asian soft shell turtles, or the Badager species. But those don't, yeah, you can keep them and breed them, but then what do you do with them? That these are big, huge tropical riverine species that most people or even institutions have no way to keep more than one or two of, you know, if that. So they're just, those are species that are best managed in the wild. They're not really, you can't really manage populations of them in captivity without spending tens of millions of dollars on facilities to do it. Or maybe in South Florida or Hawaii. But yeah, so that's kind of how we choose what species we choose to be here. And this is where we're at. Everything you see here are all species that we keep and breed here. In fact, I've taken almost all of these photos here. And you know, species like the Indo-Chinese box turtle, Kora galbinifrons. Next year, we will surpass 100 hatchlings. As of right now, we've hatched 93 to date. And I'm not sure anyone has ever done that, you know. So we're really excited about this. And not only have we hatched, you know, almost 100 of them, but from close to 20 individual parental bloodlines. So we're really boosting populations. We'll be able to, we raise those turtles up, make sure see what sexes we're getting based on the different incubation techniques we're using. And then we can start putting small groups together to place in other facilities.
Yeah, so you have a growing population. I mean, that talking about, you know, the chance of hatching more than surpassing 100 Indo-Chinese box turtles next year is absolutely incredible. But it brings up the point of space and the need to expand. And I know, you know, with the Turtle Survival Center, you know, there's always this vision of expansion. There's always more to do, right? And going into the future, you know, that is where you know, we're always looking. There's always something to be done today, but there's always something to plan for tomorrow. And not just with the species that we already have, but also, you know, growing our North American program more with our partners with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the SAFE program, the Saving Animals from Extinction American Turtles program, being able to put confiscated turtles back into the landscape, having somewhere for them to reside in the duration that they're in captivity, from confiscation to reintroduction or conservation. And then also just, you know, having this home base, this Institute of Learning, for being able to learn more about our native turtles and be able to teach people conservation methods and strategies from a center. And that brings me to this. Now, we're not going to get into this to too much detail, but it just gives you, gives everyone an idea of growing out the center. Now, Chris, I mean, this is not static, right? So this is very much a representation of a point in time, but this could very much change, right?
Correct. Yes. This is our general plan that we came up with about 4 years ago. We had a previous plan before that we've developed into this. It was only a fraction of what we see here, and this is based on the species that are in our collection plan that we for the numbers of individuals we need to have for each species to maintain genetic diversity, 95% genetic diversity or above for the next 100+ years. And so this takes into account the F1, after the first and second generations of turtles that we would maintain here at the center to prolong that into the future as long as need be. And so yeah, that's kind of what all these enclosures types are based on. But that changes. As I said, we review the plan every year. The collection plan dictates the development plan. We do have ideas for more North American confiscation holdings in one area of the property, and we'll just see how that goes.
Yeah, I think just the basic thing you can say is that we're growing. There's a lot of room for growth. But we need, if you just look at this plot map here of the amount of land and the slide we were just looking at, it's just a fraction of it. There's a lot of potential in cross and or elsewhere of being able to just grow these assurance colonies. So the main thing is we need support, right? So all this can't be done, from nothing. So what type of support has really brought the center to be what it is today?
Well, of everything. We have some major donors that have helped out over the years, particularly the Patricia and Alan Koval Foundation, a couple other foundations, but also many zoos and aquariums have contributed to building this center. And then all the individuals out there that you just give, whatever, $5 a month or whatever. I mean, all the individual donations, it all counts. We do also especially lately, a lot more grant writing and bringing in, some grants for this. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of big, heavy grants for captive management of turtles. So we have to piece a lot of it together. That's why all of our, like these end of year campaigns and other campaigns that happen throughout the year are extremely important to not only help to grow what we're doing here at the Turtle Center, but also the projects that are going on around the world as well in range countries.
Yeah, I think that's great what you said about, somebody who gives $5 even. Everything counts. It's a community. When you break it down, the number of turtles at the center, you can look at this is how much it takes to care for a turtle for one day, for 1 week, for 1 month, for 1 year. And every contribution helps with that. So
yeah.
So I do want to say, as far as contributions go, there's very few, if any, contributions more so than those given by the three pillars, we'll say, of the Turtle Survival Center over this last decade. Yourself, Clint Doak, Carol Alvarez, who have just continued to make this center what it is. And there's been employees that have come and gone that have all brought something. There's a great staff out there right now. But this core group of people, I mean, I'm sure you have a vision, Chris. You had a vision back in 2002 and 2004 and 2011. And it's just it's the dream, right? Is just sticking
Yeah.
with it, because this work is going to outlive you.
Yep. I've been working. This has been kind of my dream since I was 5 years old, having a turtle conservation breeding center, and with, the TSA, each of us using each other, we've been able to make it happen, to do this. And I brought the animals and the expertise to do all this, and we were able to raise funds to make this happen. So it's been quite a ride, being involved with this organization for over 2 decades, and from the volunteer capacity in the beginning to eventually becoming the first U.S. based employee, to where we are now. I mean, it's just this constant growing, and now collectively until 2013 there were only ever 2 employees of the TSA, myself and an administrative staff person. And now we have a whole office, and we have 18 employees. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it is a lot compared to all the rest of the years that we've existed.
Right.
And so we have a lot more help now, a lot more expertise in different areas, because a lot of us have been doing a lot of different things that we're not necessarily experts at for a long time. And so it's great to have people that are specifically writing grants and taking care of finances and education and all this stuff, so it's great to see all of that happening too.
Yeah, it's a puzzle, and all the pieces are all falling into place, and it can, only onward and upward for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
So that being said, I want to thank everybody who has joined this webinar. Thank you very much, Cris. I mean, for all the wealth of information that you're able to give, not just about turtles, but the history. The Encyclopedia Britannica of the Turtle Survival Center, and in the history and where we're going to go in the next 10 years and beyond. So with that, I do want to open it up. If there's any questions from any of our attendees, please feel free to put it in the Q&A, and I'd be glad to ask Cris. And I definitely want to say thank you very much. All the supporters who have stuck by the Turtle Survival Center, all of the staff, all of the interns, all of the volunteers who have come through and continue to make the Turtle Survival Center what it is, and laying the groundwork for what it will continue to become. So thank you very much, and please feel free to ask any questions.
Yes, thanks everyone for their attendance, and I hope you enjoyed it. And you can also contact us later if you have. You can easily find any of our emails, I think, or Jordan or mine. And so you're welcome to send us an email at any time with any questions as well.
And there is a Q&A feature, should you like to put that question in. We'll give it just a minute to type it out. While we do that, Cris, do you have a favorite turtle at the Turtle Survival Center? Not just, I know this is always a tough one, right? Because any true turtle nerd gets this question. 1, what's your favorite species of turtle? And then 2, what's your favorite turtle? Which always, it's a dangerous question.
Yes, it is. And my answer is typically I don't have a favorite, because I do enjoy them all equally. I mean, and that is the truth. But I am kind of partial to big hard-shelled river turtles and big soft-shell river turtles. But I am drawn to the island of Sulawesi a lot, and I do really. I mean, the Sulawesi forest turtle has in a way been a little bit of a pet project of mine since the day it was described, and I went all the way to Indonesia in 1998 to see one for the first time, and in the wild, in country, and then I've been to Sulawesi multiple times since then and seen them in the wild many times, and collected data on them and whatnot. So if you want to call some of these my favorite individual turtles, oh geez, that's an even tougher one, because I think about the tens of thousands of turtles that have been in my life. Which one is my favorite? I don't know. Some of them I've had for a very, very long time.
We know that Pat Cabal has a favorite turtle at the Turtle Survival Center. Cherry, the Indo-Chinese box turtle.
Yes, that's the one that was being held by Jason. That's who that turtle is.
Yeah. Bruce wants to say, Bruce, thank you very much for joining. Bruce says, thank you. No questions, but I enjoyed the presentation. Thanks for doing this. Bruce, thank you for joining. You know, we're just glad to be able to share what we do.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your support.
Indeed.
All right. Well, with that, thank you all very much. Chris, thanks again for joining me. Always happy to talk turtles, and I'm sure we will be back in the new year talking about Turtle Survival Center and what's in store for 2024 when we get into the new year.
Yes, we will.
All right. Well, thank you, and happy new year to all of you out there. It's only a few days away.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Turtle on.
Yeah.